It's 95 degrees and humid outside. I'm sitting in my air-conditioned living room watching the World Cup, and there is a robot cutting my lawn. Welcome to the future. Robotic AI-powered lawnmowers are a thing, and more of them are coming to market. I have one of them here with me today. This is actually one of the most promising new units to hit the market recently, and it's made from a company called Mammotion, and this is the LUBA 3. The LUBA 3 comes in 3 different varieties. There's the LUBA 3 1500 that can mow lawns that are up to 0.37 acres, the LUBA 3 3000, which can cover up to 3/4 of an acre, and the unit that I have here today in the state of charge garage, which is the LUBA 3 5000. And this unit can mow lawns up to 1.25 acres. So I've got the big brother of the family here. This unit uses what Mammotion calls tri-fusion navigation, which combines 360-degree LiDAR, net RTK, and dual camera AI vision to map out your yard to within plus or minus 1 centimeter of accuracy without needing any type of physical boundary wire. So here today I'm going to do an unboxing, assembly, and first use video. I'll probably have subsequent videos once I've had a chance to use the unit for a few weeks or a month or two. But we will at least get the first use into this video to give you my initial impressions after we do unboxing and assembly. With that said, let's open her up and see what comes inside the box. All right, it's all unboxed now, and quite honestly, I'm very happy to report this doesn't look too complicated. So let's just take a look at what we have here. First up, I'll start off with the RTK antenna head. This would be the RTK antenna. I suppose, yes, it will screw into the bottom of this. These are the 2 poles for the antenna. Over here would be the power supply for the antenna. This is, I assume, a spike that will spike the antenna into the ground. Okay, then over here, this is the head for the charging dock, which is right in front of me on the floor. You can't see it, right next to the unit itself. This cover snaps on the top of the charging dock head. These 2 pieces here are called lower shell protectors. They're going to get bolted on the side of the unit underneath, and these are side specific. One is left and one is right. Hopefully they are marked. I don't see that right here, but I'm sure there's a way to identify that. Okay, and then come over here. We've got the owner's manual, which is really thick. It looks like it's about 100 pages, and man, nobody's reading that. It's like less than a millimeter in height each letter. So yeah, great for including it, but unless you get a magnifier, you're not reading that. I'm probably going to go online if I have any issues putting things together here. These are security keys. This has to get snapped into the back of the unit for it to work. These are extra cutting blades and screws. It's a little brush that I'm sure it's to brush something off. They do include a screwdriver here with the 2 different heads that you can use to put the unit together. And then this is the power supply, along with mounting screws and I guess cable holders for the charging dock itself. So looks pretty straightforward. Next up, we'll start putting this thing together, assembling the RTK antenna and installing it on my front lawn. Today's video is sponsored by EVChargingStations.com. If you drive an electric vehicle or you're planning to, this site is packed with comprehensive charger reviews, detailed DC fast charging graphs, and the latest news from all of the fast charging networks. You'll find real-world testing, easy-to-understand comparison, and deep dives into how different electric vehicles actually charge. Before you buy an EV charger or plan your next road trip, make sure to bookmark evchargingstations.com and make smarter charging decisions. All right, I forgot to mention in the unboxing, it also comes with this quick start guide, which, to be quite honest with you, I didn't find entirely helpful. It does have pictures, but with no writing or description or telling you what the parts are. So I prefer to go to YouTube and look up a couple of videos. Mammotion actually has an installation guide on YouTube, which you can follow, or you can follow me along here. All right, so first thing for installation is we're going to install this front bumper. Pretty simple. You just need the bumper. It comes with this little bag of screws for the bumper, but I found it interesting that the screws aren't labeled with what they're used for. There's just a number, and this bag here ends in 000465. So when I did the Yarbo lawnmower and snowblower, that came with a lot of parts that I put together, but I found it really helpful that everything was labeled explicitly for what the use was. And that really helped in looking at the instructions and then finding the right item that you needed. This really just has numbers with a QR code that you can scan. I'd much prefer if it just told you, like, these are the screws for the front bumper, but it doesn't. In any event, you also need the screwdriver that they provide you with. And as I mentioned, this flips back and forth. For this, we need the Phillips head end out. So it's really simple. There's a little wire with a plug sticking out of the front of the unit here. What we're going to do is plug that into the unit. Now there is a top and a bottom. If you see on the front, it says Mammotion. You want that to be properly positioned. You don't want it to be upside down. And there's also an L and an R on the top, so it shows you exactly which way to go. And also the plug, when you pull it out, it naturally would be in the right position. So we're going to plug that in, wait till it snaps. I got that snap. And now there's two tabs on the side of the bumper. You push those in and then slide it in, and then it snaps in place. Okay, so now that it's in place, there's two holes that these screws go into. And what those are going to do is lock it in place so that you can't squeeze these tabs and pull it out. So I'll put those two screws on now. All right, those two screws are attached, and the bag did come with 4 screws, so I assume it's 2 extra. I don't think we use those 2 other screws for anything else, but we'll find out as we move along. Next thing, we have to put on these 2 guards underneath the unit on the side. Now to do that, you got to flip the unit over. You got to be careful because this LiDAR sensor here on the top is pretty fragile. There is a steel guard around it, but still, if you just turn this thing down and sit this on the top, there's a good chance you're going to mess it up. So conveniently, you can use the styrofoam packing that came with the unit. It provides a perfect sort of stand for it, so now the LiDAR's not being touched. Now, what I am going to do is get gloves, because underneath here is the cutting blades, and I don't want to get cut up with that. But first I can put these 2 guards on, and then we'll remove this and take a look underneath. Again, I'll use the driver, but this time we got to turn it around because it's not Phillips head. Okay, so I've got the 2 guards on, and the one thing I forgot to mention was The bolts that you use for this are embedded in the piece themselves. They don't come separately, so all you have to do is screw them in. All right, so I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to grab some gloves because I'm going to take this off now, and I don't want to slice up my fingers on those razor blades. And once you've got the two side guards on, it's time to take off this protective shipping cover. And you notice these are the cutting blades. There's 2 discs. Each one has 6 blades. These are like mini razor blades that spin. Now, I'd imagine that these need to be replaced frequently if you're cutting your lawn a lot. If you have a big lawn and you've got thick grass, some grass is softer than other grass. I guess it depends on what type of grass you have. But you know, the Yarbo Lawnmower Pro that I recently reviewed has standard the same type of 2 discs with these razor blade cutters, but they also provide you with straight blades, which I prefer for cutting my lawn at least. I'd imagine if you had a smaller lawn, they're not going to wear out too fast. But I think with my big property here, you know, we're going to be cutting about an acre of grass. I would imagine that these are going to wear out. We'll see. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I'm not excited about the fact that it has these little razor blade type cutters as opposed to straight blades that you could take off and grind down and sharpen them. This is, you know, having to replace these, you know, maybe a couple times a season might be a little bit of a pain, but perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe that won't be an issue, but that's just my observation. Okay, so we're pretty much done now. We can flip it over. I'm gonna pull it out here a little bit, turn it upside down. Now the unit isn't too heavy. I think it weighs like 42 pounds. So let's slide this out. Okay, the only thing left that we have to do is to put the safety key in the back. And next up, we're going to move to installing the charging pad. Installing the charging dock takes only a few minutes. After deciding on a location, you snap the plastic head cover on and then drive the plastic ground screws in to hold the pad in place. Plug the dock into a nearby outlet and slide the mower onto the dock so it can charge up. Finally, you should install the cable management spikes to keep the cable in place so it doesn't move and potentially get run over by the mower. And next it was time to map out the cutting area. One of the great features about the LUBA 3 is that it can do that on its own. It doesn't need you to walk it around the perimeter of the cutting area as some of the competing robotic lawnmowers do. Now, you can do that if you want to, but it also can do it on its own, which I intended on letting it do. And the LUBA 3 doesn't require the installation of the RTK antenna. That's one of the advanced features that it has. You can connect to your Wi-Fi and you don't have to install the antenna. And my plan was to try it out first that way. I had planned all along on installing the antenna, but I just wanted to see how it would work without the antenna. Unfortunately, I couldn't seem to get it to connect and map out the area. So I said, okay, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that. Let's just install the antenna and have it map out that way. So next up, let's take a look at how you put the antenna together and then install it. All right, well, it was worth a try. I was always planning on installing the RTK antenna, but I wanted to see if it would work without it because they do advertise that it's not required. But I kind of figured I was going to need it because of my property. Where I live here, I don't get great GPS satellite connection. Matter of fact, when I did the review of another autonomous lawnmower, the Yarbo system, I had a lot of problems getting the system to connect to the satellite. So I figured I was going to be doing this anyway, but I just wanted to see if it would work. All right, so now let's put this RTK antenna together. Very simple. We have here the spike for the ground. This is the actual antenna that goes underneath the antenna head. And then there are some clips here for cable management, extension cable because you can connect this either directly to the charging dock. There's a 6-foot cable, I think it's about 6 feet, that comes out of the back of the charging dock. So you can connect the antenna right to it. If you were going to mount the antenna right near the charging pad, if you want to do it a little bit farther, use this extension cable, which I'm going to use. There's also an additional power supply if you wanted to install the RTK antenna farther away from the charging dock. I don't think I'm going to need to do that. We may end up doing that if we're not getting good satellite reception, but I think this cable is going to be long enough so I can get it away from the charging dock and out more in an open area, because we need to get full view of the sky. My property is challenging. The entire property is surrounded with very tall, mature trees, and they block the satellite signal. So we may have to move this around a little bit to get a good position so that it gets a nice solid signal for the unit, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so how do you put this together? Really simple. I'll start off with the top piece is the piece with this plastic screw on top and a hole here. What you have to do is feed the cable through the top, and you're going to want to get it far enough in where you can reach it through this hole here in the cable. Then you want to pull it out. And now going to attach this to the pole. Let me slide this in. There's some grooves that you got to lock it into. So, okay, I got it in the grooves, and now screw this in. Okay. And now we can screw this pole in. Now you use the threaded side, and there's only one side that you can put it in, because the other side actually has a small threaded hole, and that's for the spike to go into. This threads here into the bottom of the antenna. So I don't want to put that on the ground right now. Let's slide it out. This goes in here, and then we should be able to screw this in. Yep, there we go. And then you'll notice it has the center spike and then 2 additional spikes. One of them is welded, the other one flexes, so you can, let me get it on all the way first. So you can kind of move this spike to the position you want, depending on how you feel is the best to secure it to the ground. Okay, so that's together now. Now these clips here, what you do is you just basically pop them over. Let me get this cable up here. You just pop them over the tube of the pole, and then there's a groove for the cable to fit into. So that way it's a nice tight grip on the cable. You don't want it flailing around in the wind or possibly moving at the base and then the lawnmower running it over. So let me slide this on. They give you 3 of these clips, so I will take their advice and use all 3 of them. The last one down here. Okay. And you notice the cable is just a little bit longer than the length of the pole. That's why you've got this extension cable. And if you were going to locate it really close to the charging dock, like right behind it, you wouldn't even need this because, as I said, it's about 6 feet long. Oh, forgot, last step here is to actually put the antenna on. That would not work very well without this guy. So this just screws into the bottom. Okay, and now we're ready to locate it. Actually, I missed it. There's 4 of these clips. I really don't think it needs 4, but I'll put one on and separate them. So one about every foot or so. There we go. Okay, we are good to go with this guy here. And I'm going to go around to the front of the house where I have the charging pad, connect this, and mount it into the ground. Then we'll start the mapping process. Since I have the charging dock right up against the house, I didn't want to put the antenna there, so I ran the cable across my porch and mounted the antenna on the front lawn where the GPS signal wouldn't be obstructed by my house. All right, well, I have the RTK antenna set up to my right, and the charging dock is to my left. They're about 20 feet apart. I put the RTK antenna out in front of my house because I was afraid if I put it too close to the unit itself over here, it's too close to the house and it's not going to get a good clear view to the satellites like it should there. If this doesn't work, I've got some room here to move it around and possibly put it in a different location, but I think we're going to work here because it appears as though the app is telling me that we're ready to start mapping the yard. So I'm going to hit start mapping. Next, pre-mapping check, identifiable reference objects within 98 feet of the station, trees, flowers, buildings, no obstruction within 10 feet of the front of the charging station. There isn't. It is kind of close to the right side of it, so that might be a problem at some point. Okay, and now we've got all green checks, and the start mapping button is black. It's not grayed out. When I tried to do the mapping without the RTK antenna, that was grayed out and it wouldn't let me hit start mapping. So this is good. It looks like we can go. So I'm going to hit start mapping now. Now it's asking me if I should do auto mapping or manual mapping. Let's try the auto mapping. I'm interested in seeing how well that it works. If that doesn't work, then I'll manually walk it around the perimeter of the property. So I'll hit continue. It says undocking from the charging station. Please wait. Okay. We're mapping. Okay, it looks like it's going to go back towards the charging dock. No, it's not. It's just kind of spinning around right now, checking out the area. It might see me as an obstruction. It probably does, and it probably sees this camera as an obstruction too. So I'm going to move everything. All right, so the app says a lawn has been found. So mark the lawn, start mapping. Now I'm assuming I shouldn't be near it, and I shouldn't even have the tripod near it while it's doing this, because it's going to view this as an obstruction and it may not cut this area. So I'm going to move out of the way of this thing now. So I'm interested to see what it does when it gets close to the rocks and the mulch area that I have by the shrubs. It's heading straight for it since leaving the charging dock. All right, it's identified that as no longer the lawn. Cool, passes the first test. Let's watch how it maps out the rest. Before I show that, I want to explain how my property looks. I plan to set up 3 distinct cutting zones. The red zone is half of the front yard and is separated by the driveway from the other half of the front yard, seen here in yellow. Then there's the rear yard showed in green. On this first use, I plan to have the LUBA 3 only map out the red area, which is a little more than 1/3 of an acre of cutting surface. So the LUBA meticulously mapped out the area, frequently covering the same area more than once, going back and forth, mapping out the edge of the driveway, which is outlined by a row of rocks. The process took about 3 hours, and the LUBA went back to the charging dock to recharge when it was finished. The LUBA 3 has finished mapping out this one cutting zone. It took over 3 hours to map out this area. I'm sure if I'd have done it manually and walked the perimeter, I could have done it in like less than an hour for sure, but we wanted to see how it does it when you let it map out itself. The process is it goes back and forth. It doesn't go around the perimeter. It basically covers the entire area and fills it in as the LiDAR and radar and cameras see the area. It does pick up obstructions. It noted that there's a tree on my front property, a utility pole, a bird feeder. It didn't note the septic tank access pipes that stick up above the ground, and I noticed it bumped into one. So it's going to be interesting when it cuts, if it goes around them or keeps hitting them. They only stick up out of the ground like 4 or 5 inches, but I would have expected them to note that on the map. It didn't, but it did note the larger items, as I said, the tree, the utility pole, and the bird feeder. So what we're going to do now is let it start cutting, see how long it takes to cut this area. The interesting thing was, even after operating for over 3 hours mapping the area, when the LUBA 3 went back to the charging dock, and it does that automatically to recharge, the battery was still at 50% state of charge. Now, I know it used a lot less energy to map because the blades aren't spinning. It was just driving up and down, but you can see this part of my property here, it has aggressive slopes. So the wheels were spinning a little bit every now and then as it was going up and down, but that's one of the beauties of the LUBA. It can cut grass on aggressive slopes up to 80 degrees. So this actually is a good test for it. I have a very steep slope here. I'd imagine where I'm standing here is probably 15 to 20 feet higher than the front area of the lawn where it's going to be cutting during this cutting session. So it's got to come up a steep incline over here. So this is going to be a good test. All right, with that said, let's start the LUBA up and we'll see how she does. All right, well, it's the next morning. The LUBA 3 finished the job last night, went back to the dock and charged up. It's back at 100% now in the morning. We're going to take a walk around this approximately 15,000 square foot area, which is a little more than 1/3 of an acre, and analyze how well the LUBA 3 did on its first pass. Okay, well, let's start at the very top of the lawn. I'm walking off the driveway now. You can see here the walkway to the front porch. There is the RTK antenna. First thing that I want to take a look at is how it cut up to the pavers. Pretty good. There's a little bit of tall grass here that it didn't cut on the very edge, but for the most part, it got pretty much right up to the pavers. Pretty good job there. Okay, over here now, if you'll notice, along my whole driveway, I have kind of like a little mini wall of rocks that separate the mulch from the grass. And that has a jagged edge all the way out. So I was interested in seeing how the LUBA would work with that. Would it keep bumping into the rocks? I saw when it was mapping out the area, that's what it was doing. It was trying to get the wheels kind of almost on the rocks in many instances. And that was good because that meant it was going to cut pretty close. Up here, it's not that close. It's about a foot off of the rocks here. So let's see how it does all the way around. It actually gets better over here. It doesn't get this very corner here, which is totally understandable. I expected to have to come out with a string trimmer and trim along the edges. That's what my landscaper has to do anyway, even with his equipment. But if you come along here, there's some tall grass here, but that's really, it's almost growing through the rocks. I can't blame it for that. But the rest of it here, it's cutting pretty much up to the rocks. I'm impressed with that. Here's one of my septic. I have a dual septic system. One of the pipes sticking out, you'll notice maybe about 10 inches around it, it didn't cut, which again, totally understandable. It's not going to be able to get right up to that. Let's walk down here. You can see the whole property here. It's a big section that it cut, as I mentioned, more than 1/3 of an acre. Come down here, pretty close. There's a few strands of grass sticking out, but I am very impressed with how close it cut to the rocks. It got closer than I thought. Over here, definitely left a little bit. It's kind of uneven. In some areas, it got really close. In some areas, it pulls away a little bit. But this whole section here, it cut very well. Now, as we come down kind of to the middle of the area, we'll notice here, definitely didn't cut this patch here. And it's possible that because this was really jagged here where the rocks are, that it kind of just went around it sort of as an obstacle. But then we get down here and there's really no obstacle here. It didn't cut this grass at all. And this is, you know, maybe almost 2 feet off of the rocks. As a matter of fact, this whole area here, I notice while it was cut, there's definitely strands of that thicker grass. I don't have high quality grass here or sod. It's probably a mixture of different types of grass seed that was used through the years. And this is different grass here. It's kind of like a thicker, stronger grass. And it appears as though the razor blades didn't cut it well because some of it's cut and some of the grass is sticking up. Now, I will say one thing in the LUBA 3's defense. I didn't cut the lawn for 2 weeks before this because I wanted to see how it did in kind of like a higher grass situation. And also, we haven't gotten rain, and my lawn will turn brown here if we don't get rain for a while. I don't have a sprinkler system, and the lawn's too big for me to manually water. So I let it grow a little bit longer sometimes when it doesn't dry. And I think that this was a little too high for it with this thick grass. The smaller thin grass that I have, it cut fine, but where there's areas of patches of like a different grass variety, it seems like it didn't cut it that well. I'm gonna cut it again in a few days to see. The second pass might be what it needs to cut this down, but you could definitely see it here. All right, come over here. Pretty good. Over here in this area, again, we're getting a lot of these patches of where there's kind of like a different variety of grass growing, and it's a thicker, stronger grass. I think those razor blades just weren't able to cut through it because some of the blades are cut, I could see, but some of them aren't. And over here, there's a big circle here of grass. You could probably see that it didn't cut at all. It kind of avoided it like it was an obstacle. Not sure exactly what's going on with that. I'll see if it cuts it on the second pass. And if it doesn't, what I'll do is come out with a string trimmer, cut this down, and see if subsequent cuts work and it cuts over it. This just might have been too high and too thick, and it might have viewed it as some sort of an obstacle to go around. All right, keep moving down. It's better down here for sure. Now over here, I have a utility pole. It cut pretty well around it. I mean, there's maybe 12 inches of uncut grass around the base of it, but you got to expect that. And also here where we have the pole tied down. Moving on. Over here, it cut right up to the rocks, but as you can see, the grass doesn't grow right up to the rocks, but it did cut it all. This lower area here, actually, let's come up behind here before I go to the bottom. This section here is cut pretty well. Again, I can see strands of grass here and there sticking up. It wasn't a clean cut, but this area here gets a lot of shade, so the grass actually grows better over here. It doesn't get as hot. This was really high, and you could see, let me see here. You could actually see this is how much was cut off, which was a good 5-6 inches. It doesn't mulch the grass well. There's little razor blades kind of just cut it once and then it falls over. Not like straight blades or a full-size mower that kind of cut the blades a couple of times and mulch it up. This doesn't. This leaves, I mean, you can see this, but you know, that's because it was 2 weeks of cut. Down here you can see it a lot clumping up, and it was pretty deep over here. I think subsequent cuts, if I have a cut every week, this won't happen, but we'll see. Over here, now you can notice this is a pretty steep incline here. This is where I'm standing now is about 6 feet lower than where the fence around my pool area is. So it was able to handle this hill. And even this area here, it's so steep that I can't grow grass here. It just keeps getting washed away. And then it cuts up to the edge there, just as far as you could see. And then that, beyond that is what I consider the backyard. And that's gonna be a completely different work zone. But it cut this whole hill here fine. You can see how, it's hard to see depth in video, but this is, you know, hard to walk up and down. Okay, around the edge here, cut right up to the weeds. Over here a little bit left over, but that's fine. This actually goes up pretty steep over here, so I can understand why it didn't do that. Over here there's, again, about 11 inches of uncut grass. And as you come down here, same thing, less than a foot around this edge here. But this whole area here is cut pretty well, other than, you know, the occasional blade of grass sticking up that it didn't cut. I honestly think that part of the reason was because I didn't cut this for a couple weeks, because this was tall down here. It cut a good amount of grass, and it might have been a little bit too much for it, but it did cut it. And we'll see in subsequent cuts when it doesn't have to cut the grass as high. Okay, over here, this is uncut here. I don't know if you could see that. I don't know why. You should have been able to get closer to the rocks over here than it did. Come down here, same thing. We've got these patches of grass here that just wasn't cut. It's odd. You can see the tracks. The mower did this area for sure, but some of the grass just wasn't cut. Okay, and around here we have another one of these utility pole tie downs. This one actually, there's a lot of uncut grass around it, more than the other one. This I'm gonna have to get the string trimmer out all the way around here. That's it. I mean, look at this. This is really a good size lot to cut. And yeah, it did take a long time. It took like 7 hours, I think, for it to finish. But I did have the speed on medium. Maybe next time I'll try it on high. But it did pretty well. I might give it I have to think about this if I'm going to grade it. Maybe a C+ to B-. I think if I can adjust the settings a little bit, it might do a little bit better. But for the first attempt, and the fact that the grass was pretty high down here, I'm happy with it so far. Fast forward 3 weeks. The LUBA 3 has cut my lawn 4 times now. The first time that I went over just previously, and 3 subsequent times, because I really wanted to give it a better chance at showing me what it can do after multiple cuts. And I have to say, I am very impressed. It seemingly gets better each time it cuts the lawn. I don't know if it's continuing to learn the property, but it's really doing a great job. It's not perfect. There are little patches of grass that it misses every now and then, but overall, this is a solid B to B+ now. The edges, it seems to be getting even closer to. There's still small areas that need to be cleaned up with the string trimmer, especially around the tree and around the bird feeder and the utility pole and around the vent pipes for the septic system. It doesn't get right up to those, but overall it's doing a fantastic job. I think I did it a disservice that first cut by not cutting the lawn for a couple of weeks before I did it, because it was very high, and I think it struggled with that. It definitely didn't do as good a job on that first cut as it has on subsequent cuts. Very, very impressed. Well, that's pretty much it for this first use video. I am going to map out the other 2 sections of my lawn. We'll make a subsequent video of it doing the whole property. That'll probably come up in 3 or 4 weeks. But for now, I'm going to take a look at some of the data in the app, and also we'll talk about some of the features offered in the LUBA 3's app. All right, well, so far so good. As you can tell, I'm impressed with the LUBA 3, and it does appear to be learning the property and getting better at each cut. The real test is going to be when I set it up to cut the other 2 cutting zones. Now, I have a 2-acre property here, but it's not obviously all grass. This part of the lawn was a little more than 1/3 of an acre. I think the other front section is probably going to be even a little bit more than this, maybe 40 to 45% of an acre, not quite half an acre. And the rear section is probably going to be about 25% of an acre. So we're going to get close to a full acre of cutting area. And this LUBA 3 5000 is supposed to be able to handle up to 1.25 acres. So it should be within its capabilities. Now, there are the 2 other lower powered units that cost less to consider if your lawn is smaller, and I would size it according to what I need, because this is expensive. This unit here retails for $3,300. The other units cost less, but $3,300 isn't inexpensive. But if you're spending money to have your lawn cut, or if you just don't want to cut your lawn anymore and you have the money, I think it's worth it. Another thing that the LUBA 3 has, it's a great app. It lets you do a bunch of things to adjust, like the cutting height, the mowing speed, the blade speed, the cutting path spacing. You could set it to return to the dock at a certain state of charge and also continue cutting at a certain state of charge. You could set up schedules. You could tell it I wanted to cut it every Wednesday and start at 8 a.m. or even at night. And that's the interesting thing. One of the cuttings that I did was at night. I set it to start late at night and it cut my lawn overnight. And before you say, well, your neighbors must have loved you for that. First of all, where I live here, we're kind of spaced out, but that wouldn't have to be the case. This thing is quiet. You can't hear it even about 15 feet away from it. It's super quiet. So even if your neighbor was right on top of your house, I mean, if there was 10 feet between your houses, it wouldn't bother your neighbor cutting overnight. They would never hear it. Even with the windows open, they wouldn't hear it. That's how quiet this thing is. So it's really cool that you could just let it cut overnight, and in the morning, you've got a freshly cut lawn. Now, I know some people might be concerned about theft, because this is an expensive item and it's going to stay outside. Well, nobody can stop somebody from stealing it and throwing it out, let's say, but they can't steal it and use it. There's a couple of things that Mammotion has done to prevent that. Number one, there's built-in 4G and GPS tracking. So through the app, you can see where it is. And you could also set up alerts so that if it leaves the geofenced area, you'll get an alert in your phone. It's got lift and tilt sensors so that if somebody does pick it up to carry it away, it can trigger an alarm. And it's also permanently linked to your Mammotion app account. So it's useless. If somebody were to steal it, they can't use it. So that's kind of a deterrent. I mean, you're banking on the person knowing that they can't use it if they steal it, which may not be the case. So there are some safeguards in place to prevent theft. And nobody can completely eliminate it, but at least you know that the person can't use it. It renders it unusable to somebody other than you that's linked to your account. Another thing that's really cool about the app is you can watch in real time the progress of the unit, and it actually shows where it is on your property, going back and forth and cutting the lawn, the percentage of lawn that's done, how much time it needs to finish. And if you really want to geek out, you can turn the cameras on and actually see a ground level view of where the unit is cutting. So I think that's pretty cool. I think everybody will do that when they first get it because it's just cool to watch it as it's driving around. But then after that, there's not a whole lot of real reason to do that. And you could always adjust the cutting area too. If there's areas that you want it to maybe cut a little bit further, or an area that it's not doing, you can adjust it in the app and tell it to cut this area or set up no-go zones. So there's a lot of things, a lot to play with. This isn't something that you're just going to set up and it's going to be perfect from day one. It's probably going to take some time to get everything mapped out perfectly, but I think it's worth it. It's really cool, and I am super impressed with how good it's doing so far. I am curious to see how long the razor blade blades last without having to replace them. Now, they do give you a replacement set, and it seems would be pretty easy to just flip it over and replace those. But if you do flip it over, make sure you put it on something like that styrofoam packing unit that it comes with, because you don't want to damage the LiDAR that's sticking out of the top. That's really important not to damage that. So anyway, well, that's my first use here for the Mammotion LUBA 3 robotic lawnmower. I'm pretty much sold. This thing is doing really well. But again, we're going to do further tests. I'll have more videos on it, and we'll see long-term how it holds up. Listen, if this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.